made me a true warrior. Finish him. Goro wins. Fatality.
Everyone knows Don loves 2 games in his life.
Yes.
He loves Trials,
Yes.
and he loves Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Is that true? Are those your 2 greatest loves of video games?
Perhaps Wave Race 64. Trials, you could, as a franchise,
Yeah.
Trials and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about individual games, you got to slip Wave Race 64 in there. It's an oldie but a goodie. I mean, there's lots of games.
Taste.
There's a lot of games I like, but yeah.
I know, but the games you love, like I see
I
passion in you when we talk about Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I always get excited. I have a ton of fun. I'm just a huge fan.
I think there's a lot in Mortal Kombat to enjoy, like its story. Huber, you've played through the entirety of this story. Does it stack up?
Yeah, the scope is what I really liked about it. It's really, really huge, and the stakes feel high. As a fan, I think the greatest part was being able to be in the role of some of these characters' children, like Cassie Cage and Kung Lao's descendant or whatever, Kung Jin. And, sometimes I got a little lost because there's so much time jumping. It's like change character, change time, change character, because you're going over this huge course of time with a ton of playable characters. So at parts, it's kind of all over the place. But it's never boring. It is always in your face, fast paced. Seeing these characters clash is the pure joy of it.
And Don, for like a lore master like yourself, is this just like, all of this makes total sense and is great?
I haven't gotten far enough in the story to know, but I mean, this actually seems like one of the biggest, freshest departures from retelling any kind of lore. Like the last one definitely seemed like it was a retelling of the first 3, but it was also a culmination of like a bunch of different parts of lore included. But this one really seems like NetherRealm is taking it to like their fresh take on not just the game, but they're really making the story their own. They're not treading on so much of old storylines as far as I've seen. I'm only 6 chapters in, so I don't know where it's going to go. But to me, it seems like it's kind of like a departure. They're bringing in all these characters still, and keeping their histories intact. But in terms of the story, it seems like a pretty new story.
Yeah, because it's not retconning anything.
Yeah.
The last one took place at the end of Armageddon. Raiden goes back. So he's going back in time. And then the timeline, it's a new timeline. So like all the other Mortal Kombat still happened, but by Raiden going back in time here in the 2011 reboot, we're now on this path.
Right.
Yeah. And if you've seen the new Star Trek, it's basically the same thing that film franchise did. Yeah. It's like none of that, all that still happened, but now we're on we've reset over here on this timeline.
And when you reset to the new timeline in the last one, it did sort of go through very similar things in terms of first the tournament happened, and then Shao Kahn, and Shao Kahn invaded the Earth realm and all that. So similar events happened, but there were differences then. Yeah. But now it seems like it's really, I don't know if it continues, but it seems like a departure from that, where it's really just a whole new story in the timeline.
I love that we're talking about this stuff for a fighting game. Yeah. Do you know? I mean, fighting games have always had story, it seems like, and they always have some sort of continuity. I think Mortal Kombat has finally embraced it and made it a huge part of its game, and I really appreciate that. I think that's huge.
Absolutely.
The other thing that just stood out to me is just the quality of it in terms of a film. It's sort of like, at least the first few chapters, the quality in terms of the camera work and all the film effects and the action scenes, the choreography, the animation of the fight scenes and everything. It's like you're watching a really badass action or martial arts movie, and it's like a very cinematic quality to it. So it's like, and then they throw in the QuickTime events, which usually I'm not a fan of at all, but I actually like them in the story because it kind of just, you got to keep paying attention between fights. You're not just, okay, set down the controller and watch. It actually makes it a little, interactive movie. I'm loving the quality.
Speaking of film,
okay,
slightly off topic here. Do you think, but on topic, do you think the Mortal Kombat movie, the original movie, had anything to do with the rise of the Mortal Kombat Legacy's storytelling? Because for me as a kid, let me phrase this better.
Okay.
For me as a kid growing up, loved Mortal Kombat, absolutely my favorite fighting franchise. Bought a Genesis over Super Nintendo because of that game. And seeing the movie just put everything into perspective and contextualized everything, and it really fleshed out the universe. And ever since then, that is when I became so obsessed with the Mortal Kombat lore, was because of that movie and because of what they did there. Did you guys have that same effect or no?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. I mean, I think that was probably one of the best video game movies.
Easily.
Yeah, I mean, and so, like, when we're talking about this story being good, I think we're talking about it the same way that movie is good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is just, it's
silly, but
a little silly and dumb, but it's just so, it knows what it is. It's hitting all the notes that it wants to hit, and I think that's what makes it all a success. Yeah. What I get excited about is that Mortal Kombat, as opposed to a lot of other fighting game series, is also willing to let its characters get old.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to see Kenshi with a gray beard.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I think that a lot of characters are just frozen in time, and I think fighting game fans appreciate that because they just want their Ryu to always be Ryu. They don't want a gray-haired Ryu. But I just think it's like very bold to just be like, okay, here's Johnny Cage. He's old now.
And they first did that at the very beginning, which was bold and cool back then, from 1 to 2, when Shang Tsung went from being the old man to suddenly he's this young badass version of Shang Tsung.
With, like,
no
weird
game had done
yellow
that.
pants.
Yeah, and the suspenders or something. But there's something so cool about it. You're like, what? Like, the younger version of him now I get to play. But in this one, they've got so many of the next generation of fighters.
What do you think about the new characters, the new ones that have been introduced? Like Kato Khan, what's his name?
Kotal Khan.
Kotal Khan, yeah.
I think they're cool. It's hard to go up against the Mortal Kombat legacy. You know, I mean, there's like Scorpion and Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage, Raiden. All of them are always going to be my favorites. Mm-hmm. But I love Cassie Cage and Jackie Briggs the most because of their legacy. They're the children of Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, and Jax.
So, like, talking, I guess, on the fighting game aspect of it, how does that work? Are they incorporating moves from other characters, or do they feel like new characters?
Cassie Cage, yeah, both. Because Jackie Briggs has like the metal gauntlets to punch, just like Jax, and then Cassie goes for the nuts all the time.
All the time.
Her X-ray move. Oh my god,
her X-ray
it's
move.
brutal. It's brutal.
And then I guess the other ones, the more unique ones, are the ones I'm like especially curious about. Ferrator.
Yeah.
Did you put any time into
Love
that?
Ferrator.
Really?
Ferrator is awesome. Because I appreciate Ferrator's variations the most, because one of the variations is where Tor just fights by himself.
Yeah.
It's like
a brute.
And she just kind of like hangs out in the back.
I like that. Yeah.
So it's like the most drastic of the variations, which I loved.
And one, it allows him to like hurt himself to do more damage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
they are.
digs
You're right.
in.
That character in particular does have like. We should talk about variations. That's another new thing that was introduced here. Each character has 3 different variations that you must select, or one of them.
Yeah.
How well do you think it's implemented?
I think it's great. We were talking about this in detail. You know, you were really concerned.
Yeah.
Because in the other ones, you could just change your fighting style mid-match, and then you would have a set of moves, so you could start comboing the variations together. But I think it works better now because it's more focused, and it makes for better balance. I think it's just easier to balance all the gameplay by having just a set variation versus just chaos. Have 100 moves per fighter.
Yeah.
Let them let loose. You know, by focusing everyone, it just seems tighter.
Yeah, I would sort of agree. I mean, because in the past they experimented with that. Switch your fighting styles, switch to a weapon mid-match and all that. And at first I didn't understand why they wouldn't do it the same way, but it definitely seemed like the different fighting styles are a lot more distinguished than they were before. So it would really be a drastic change for you. It's still, I mean, they could implement it, I think, and it might have worked, but it makes more sense that they didn't, because they really are full characters in each individual fighting, form, whereas before it would just change certain stylistic things, but it really wouldn't give you a whole new moveset. It would give you a few different moves, and the weapon would be a big change. But right now, it seems like they really made them almost totally individual characters in the different styles, so it makes more sense that you can't just switch. It would be a lot, too, of moves and stuff.
It'd be insane.
So, Don, when the game was revealed, Mortal Kombat X, when it was revealed, I feel like we could turn to you and say, like, Don, yes, it's been announced. You know, it's like a Pokemon trailer is announced for me. It'd be like, oh, yes, okay, that's the one Kyle's going to be most excited about. So I remember it's been fun, like, following this game, talking to you about new trailers. Like, we're digging in, we're seeing what the game is about, and it's here, you're playing it. How do you feel about this game?
I feel really good about this game. I have not gotten to. I just can't wait till tonight and this weekend because I'm going to really get to dig into it.
Yeah.
I've only been able to get a little taste of it so far, but I'm really liking it. I think the expectations for this one, you know, you saw the trailer and you're just like, this is only going to be everything it was and greater. So we just sort of expected them to add in everything else they didn't add in. You know, before they threw in a lot of extras like babalities and just hidden characters you didn't know about, things you didn't find out about until the launch of the game, even though it also had like a year of hype like this one. But in this one, you know, I think we're kind of expecting they're just going to keep doing that, throw in everything in the kitchen sink that used to be in the franchise in terms of like being able to fight on multiple levels of the stage and, you know, tag combos. And they actually, it seems so far, they possibly have scaled it back a little. They haven't included like everything, but it's so polished for what it is, and it really feels like NetherRealm's taking it into their own hands completely, you know, and making it theirs. So it's like, it feels really fresh and new, and just the style of it and everything is just beautiful. I mean, it's another almost reinvention of it, I think, from what I've been able to play so far. So I'm digging it a lot.
Cool.